So let's kick this off. Since the last time we speculated that Elon was going to drop a bunch of Twitter stuff, he immediately did. Matt Taibbi, I guess you would call him a centrist reporter, but really he's been a liberal reporter his entire life. He's only recently become centrist. He did the whole thing where sort of the left moved further left and left him
Hmm.
behind. He did. I don't think he changed. So he broke the story for Elon, which makes sense because he's not gonna go through all the effort of sifting through and producing something that people can consume.
Hmm. I thought that was a pretty interesting move by Elon. I mean, it makes sense, after we see it, but it was I certainly didn't expect something like that.
So
That
that
he
was on
handed it.
December 2nd, and
Yeah.
recently, maybe a couple days ago, Barry Weiss did part two. She's another reporter who, same thing as Taibbi, and she did part two. There was a lot of juicy stuff in them. Any smoking guns? Yeah, I would say borderline smoking guns. Since that time, Elon has said he fears assassination because, he has a target on his back. He doesn't do autographs anymore. He has security, although he's always had security.
He said no more open air parades.
Right. So after that, you have the typical response that I predicted. The mainstream media has been ignoring the story. They have given it very short shrift. Some people say maybe 7 minutes on NBC. I don't know. It's hard to say, but just use your common sense. It does feel like they have not been covering it.
And they've been attacking Taibbi, right? Or at least a lot of people have. I don't
They
know if
have been,
him.
and they've all been using the same script. It like seems very NPC. Like they all got the memo from one place. I don't know what place that is, but they all been calling Taibbi running interference for Elon Musk. They use roughly the same language. So
It's so weird.
MSM proves they're NPCs. They prove they're biased. They are trying to suppress the story, much like everyone tried to suppress the Hunter Biden laptop. They're minimizing it. They're ignoring it. There was a lawyer at Twitter named James Baker, who I won't say was deleting anything or suppressing, but Elon found out that the files, basically, Elon asked for files. He's not going in himself and grabbing them out of a computer or whatever. He's asking for someone to give it to him, and they were being filtered through someone named James Baker, a lawyer.
Yeah. Who's
And
ex
Elon didn't,
FBI, right?
ex FBI, Elon fired him. Didn't
Good
say
riddance.
exactly why, but
Yeah.
we can assume he didn't like his answers. So now you just have a bombshell that predictably the left is trying to minimize and say is not a bombshell. They have their arguments as to why this is not a big deal. Of course, people on the right are jumping for joy and feel vindicated. They think this is evidence that, yes, conservatives have been unfairly censored and targeted by Twitter all this time. This is clearly a smoking gun. This is clear evidence of it. And you have people on the left saying, no, it's not. And they have, their arguments. So that's where we are today. Maybe 6 days later and two drops later. To recap what happened, what Taibbi said, and then what Weiss said.
Uh-huh.
Taibbi essentially said that, yes, there were biased results in censorship. People were able to contact Twitter and have, things suppressed, people banned, things deleted. People were able to do this. Now, he does state that this is not just Democrats that were able to do this. Republicans also could do this, but he also says that it sort of depends on if you had a contact in Twitter who was a friendly ear. And of course, since 97% of people in Twitter are Democrats, that means that Democrats had a lot more friendly ears to go to when they wanted something done. So that's essentially what Taibbi put forth. Yes, he confirmed that there was a bias at Twitter, and that bias led to biased results. Conservatives were deleted, banned more often than liberals. Part two, Barry Weiss. Now, what is she? She basically confirmed that, how Twitter always leans on their terms of service, blah, blah, blah. Oh, they were only banned because they violated terms of service. Her bombshell is that not everyone was necessarily even banned because they violated terms of service. It was just a judgment call by the trust and safety team. And there was a lot more discretion in this process than maybe Twitter let on, because some people, like libs of TikTok, apparently did not violate terms of service, but were deemed dangerous or problematic, either banned, suspended, or shadow banned. And yes, she also confirmed that shadow banning was a thing, although Twitter calls it like deprioritizing or something like that, but it's the same
Something with-
stuff.
yeah,
It's
something with
semantics. It's
visibility.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
making some people, it's making some posts much more visible to more people than other people's posts. So she says that conservatives were much more often shadow banned. So this just, it is exactly what everybody said it was. Conservatives have a tougher time on Twitter. There's a bias and it shows up in the results. There's not just a bias in how much they've, and how people at Twitter vote and who they donate to in campaigns. Because you could always, that was always their defense. They would say, well, yeah, of course, 97% of us are Democrats, but we don't treat anybody differently at work. Okay, well, if that's true, then that's fine. But the Twitter files heavily imply, if not prove, that that wasn't the case. They had been biased. Even the formulation of their terms of service came from a bias. You know, it's like garbage in, garbage out. You can't just lean on the whole. Well, it's just the terms of service. Well, what if your terms of service had something that said, like, if your last name is Trump, you're banned? You would say that these are biased terms of service, and there's a clear target in your terms of service. You couldn't just say, well, I mean, everybody was treated equally under the terms of service. It just so happens that all the people with the last name of Trump were banned. So it was an even application of the terms of service, right?
Right.
And for me to make an analogy, remember when there was an argument about gay marriage. I'm old enough to remember when gay marriage was actually an argument. And at the time, I didn't really care about gay marriage, but I felt like arguing the against side anyway. And my argument against gay marriage was that the current marriage laws on the books actually did treat everybody equally and fairly. Because if you want to get married, then go ahead, marry somebody of the opposite sex. That's what I can do, and that's what you can do. There's nothing that I can do that you can't do, and there's nothing you can do that I can't do. We can all do the same things under the law, right? That argument didn't really fly in the courts because obviously it's not equal treatment because gay people want to get married to people of the same sex. That's the way they want to engage with the marriage law. So when the marriage law was written, the very way it was written favored people who wanted to have a heterosexual marriage. So it doesn't really fly for you. It flies against common sense for you to just say, well, everybody's still treated equally. You just have to marry somebody of the opposite sex. That in itself means people are not being treated equally because they want to marry somebody of the same sex. Duh. That would be the common sense rebuttal to me, right?
Yeah.
My argument would be purely legalistic, purely procedural, which, works sometimes. But when you're dealing with issues, when you're dealing with people with a brain and you're dealing with people who use common sense, then often it doesn't fly. So I would say those two situations are similar. When you have the terms of service say things like dead naming is a violent hate crime, it's like violent speech or something, and therefore if you dead name somebody, you're banned. The rule
I don't even know
itself,
what that is. What is
that's
that?
when a person has transitioned to a different gender and you keep referring to them as the old gender or
Okay.
the old name they used to have, right?
Okay.
It would be calling Caitlyn Jenner Bruce Jenner, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that rule in itself is written from a place of bias. Will punish conservatives because they have a viewpoint. And this is something that Tim Pool talked about in the famous Tim Pool Joe Rogan interview. It was the very rule itself came from a place of bias. So of course, if you enforce it, quote unquote, equally, it's going to produce biased results.
Yeah.
What if I said it hurt my feelings or I felt it was the words were violence when I heard somebody talk about BLM, and therefore anybody who talks about BLM on Twitter should be banned.
Right. Yeah. Tim pointed out that the rules that Twitter came up with, they're based on a small sort of subset of possibilities that only the left cared about them, basically.
Yes, and they were biased in their outset. In their very inception and genesis, they were biased. Just like if I prevented you from talking about BLM, that would hurt the left way more than it would hurt the right, because the right is not even that interested in talking about BLM unless it's to, rebut assertions from BLM. So I know it feels like we've won, and if we put it all out on the table, and we've proven that conservatives were discriminated against, and their speech on Twitter was hampered. But remember that the left is putting out their own arguments, and we have to engage them. We can't just ignore them. We have to engage them, and we have to rebut them, and we have to defeat their arguments. Right? This is just going to be an ongoing struggle because they're going to do that. And to that, and you came across this Tech Dirt article, right? That had a bunch of, I think probably what you'll find to be the typical pushback from the left when it comes to the Twitter files.
Hmm. Man, yeah, that was a beautiful introduction. But I wanted to just go back real quick to the Twitter files. Do you mind?
Yeah. Let's
We
talk about more.
Okay, because one thing you pointed out, and I actually thought that the way you described Barry Weiss's sort of the essence of what she put out there, I thought that was really nice because I hadn't really heard somebody describe it quite that way before. Essentially, about she sort of showed that Twitter could have been, shadow banning or whatever people, even though they hadn't broken or violated anything in the terms. And I would say so. I'm just I tend to agree with that assessment, but I'm just trying to kind of steelman it a bit because she definitely showed that that was a possibility, right? Because like okay, she's showing screenshots, presumably of like some internal tool which is showing like this is Charlie Kirk's account, and then he's got all these different tags applied to his account, like notification spike, do not amplify, recent abuse strike, etc. So, but what she doesn't explicitly show any of the process whereby like how did Charlie Kirk get this do not amplify tag on his account? Presumably, some human actually had to add that to his account, or that doesn't necessarily have to be a human, but most likely, I think, probably a human added that to his account. But she doesn't actually give us a view of the process in which that happened. I'm just saying, I guess it's conceivable that that process was quote unquote fair in some way. I don't know, or is it? Do you think it's conceivable?
I think it's conceivable, but then that falls on the same that overlaps with Taibbi. Going back to the whole, 97% of us are Democrats, but we treat people fairly.
Right.
Taibbi established that they didn't treat people fairly. It was basically if you had a friendly ear at Twitter, you could get stuff done. We all work in places. We all know this is sort of true. And unfortunately, they're in the business of managing the public square. If it was just if you were just a person working at Chick-fil-A and your friends came over, you give them extra special treatment, right?
Right.
No problem. Who cares? It's just like they get some extra stuff at Chick-fil-A or whatever it is.
I guess.
But this is Twitter.
So yeah.
And he established that was what was happening. Let's be real, the only way to divorce bias from this process is to make it totally algorithmic. Is to take away the manual nature of it, right?
Yeah.
And so the very fact that the manual stuff, the very fact manual, so much of it can be done manually, I think is almost de facto evidence that they were abusing it.
Yeah, I tend to agree, and the reason why is that even if there was a fair process that was followed, like in order to get this quote like do not amplify tag on Charlie Kirk's account, it would only if you think about the people who are doing this process, right? It's like, who are I don't know, I would call them like support agents or whatever. Even if the rules were fairly applied in every case, the outcome is still going to be a massive...
The outcome is so lopsided and biased.
Yeah.
And here's another thing that people, I think, are ignoring. Even Matt Taibbi ignores this. He says, well, there are 3% conservatives at Twitter, so maybe if you got one of them, you could get some help. And okay, possibly, maybe on the outskirts. But I think that ignores the real world functioning of a workplace. We both work in extremely leftist fields. Even the non-leftist people where we work, there's a peer pressure. There's a incentive for you to stay hidden, right? It's not like you're the 3% guy at Twitter and here comes Trump saying, I want this, and that deleted. And then you just say, well, no problem. I can press buttons just like anybody else at my work can press buttons. So here you go, President Trump. I'm going to press all these buttons and ban all these people you don't like.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
Does that sound like a realistic scenario in a real world workplace?
You would get fucked.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
The other 97% of your coworkers can see what you're doing. It's not like you can do it in secret. And at lunch or when you go to yoga or when you go to the coffee shop down in the lobby of your building, you're going to have to face them, correct?
Yeah.
You're going to have to face your boss, who 97% chance is a leftist.
Right. And it's most likely in these kinds of tools there are trails.
Of course.
Like you'll be able to see who was the person that added the, do not amplify tag.
So I don't want to hear that. The Twitter files are convincing to me, but let's go down sort of let's list the typical rebuttals that leftists come up with.
I definitely want to get to the rebuttal, but I want to put it in kind of context of the bigger picture and sort of think about what's important. And I think the bigger picture here, what the Twitter files shows in the context. Essentially, a few years ago, social media companies and the leftists that were defending them, they claimed that they were neutral, right?
They did.
And I have dug up some evidence of this. There was this interview that Jack Dorsey gave, I think, to Brian Stelter. This is in 2018, where he even conceded that the employees of Twitter were left-leaning, but he did not concede that there was actually any bias in sort of the outcome. So then, conservatives, of course, we all said, no, you're not neutral. And then now what happened is, Elon Musk bought Twitter and the Twitter files got released. And now conservatives are saying, we have tons of evidence that you are not neutral. But the leftists have now moved the goalposts, right? And now they're saying, like, duh, we knew this, we always knew this. And, but so what? Because private companies can do whatever they want.
Yeah, a lot of people responding to it online, that is their defense. There's no official defense from, like Jack Dorsey or Vijay Getty. They haven't said, oh, it's no big deal, we're a private company. But a lot of the leftists on Twitter, and this is kind of the playbook right now. And I think they are getting it somewhere. I refer back to the NPC talking points. The NPC is all saying the same thing about Matt Taibbi. They're getting the memo from somewhere. And one of the memos is basically that, I guess it is biased, but so.
Yeah. So in thinking about this, in kind of looking at the big picture, I was kind of confused because they always had the we're a private company defense from day one, right? So I guess my question to you is, so why did they even bother to claim neutrality?
First of all, it looks better. Of course, it looks better if you're just a neutral company, right? Nobody looks that kindly on a company that's super biased and trying to influence elections. It invites so much more scrutiny if you're going to say that, especially if you're a media company and you're subject to Section 230. You don't want to invite any of that smoke. But
I guess that actually makes a lot of sense. I hadn't really thought of it, but if you think about it, there is no company out there that pretty much admits to their biases, right? Like even MSNBC, New York Times, whatever.
Right. They wouldn't admit it. They would just sort of not fight against the label so hard because they know it's true, right? But also, it makes sense because they know that their first line of defense is to say they're neutral. What if we prove that through something like the Twitter files, what if we prove that they're not neutral? Well, their second line of defense is to fall back and just say, well, it's not illegal to be biased, is it? And then they can fight two battles. They only got to win one of them. They need to dare us to prove that they're even biased. And you know what? We barely even did it by the skin of our teeth. It required the richest man on earth to overpay for your fucking company.
That's true.
How often is that going to happen? And not even because he's doing it because he can make money or there's some obvious profit motive for him. He did it mostly for, I hate to say this, but mostly for altruistic reasons, I think. How often are you going to get that kind of behavior from somebody?
Yeah,
we're talking about $44 billion. It's not like me, being an altruist and giving, Salvation Army Santa some money.
I guess, maybe people would say that, Bill Gates has done all these humanitarian things with his money.
I can even accept that. But the thing is, needing the richest man on earth to do something for you to even prove that X means that it's very unlikely that X will ever get proven. So if you're working at Twitter, why even, just tell, if people accuse you of being biased, to challenge them to prove it. I probably can't prove it. I don't have access to your internal files. I don't have access to all this stuff. I'll never have access to all this stuff. The only person who could get access to all this stuff is the richest man on earth if he decides to buy your company on a whim. I have to agree with the tactical soundness of their decision because what's the likelihood of that happening? Pretty low. So just go with the deny, deny, deny. We're not biased. And now that we prove that they are, they can just say, well, being biased isn't illegal. Okay. Now we got to
Okay,
conduct that fight.
so okay, what do you think about the argument that they needed to claim neutrality because of Section 230? What's interesting is I looked into a little. I came across. I think it was a WAPO article talking about Section 230 that actually talked a little bit about the history. I'm old enough to remember these companies, but I don't know about I don't know about you. But there are two companies that were mentioned. One was Prodigy,
Yeah.
and one was CompuServe.
Uh-huh.
The history was that Prodigy got into basically moderating content, and they got sued. CompuServe actually took the kind of like we're just a pipe approach, and they were basically okay. But the reason why 230 came about is I guess people decided that companies should have the ability to do some amount of moderation, right? Like I think probably spam would be the easiest
Right,
example
right.
to think about. So pre-Section 230, I guess companies weren't even empowered to get rid of spam for fear of being sued, basically. So I think the intent of Section 230 was to give companies the ability to at least get rid of things, content like spam, for example.
Hmm.
But it was created in a time when there were no like
Well,
YouTube
at that time, the
and
internet
Facebook.
was not the public square.
Right. Yeah, that too. Yeah. One thing in particular, relevant to what we're talking about right now is there is this like good faith clause in Section 230. It says that, it's basically saying these actions that you take to moderate, they need to be in quote good faith, right? And I wonder if that's where these companies did, it was important for these companies to project this aura of neutrality because, like, could somebody argue that if there was a political bias, that then, if a post was taken down because of a political bias,
Absolutely,
then
they could.
yeah,
Yes.
could that still be considered a good faith, restriction?
It's very arguable whether it could. And more to the point, if this were tested in the court, the
Mhm.
conservatives own the Supreme Court, right?
That's true.
So if they wanted to fight it in court, that's a losing proposition for them. I would love for this Section 230's business to go to court and just go all the way up
Mhm.
the chain. In fact,
It's
somebody
it's
should
int-
start working on a lawsuit just to make the high court see it and create
Mhm.
precedent around this. So let's address some of the typical defenses or rebuttals that the left will make. One is that Twitter's decision to suppress the Hunter Biden laptop didn't swing the election. It didn't make a difference anyway. And therefore, this is a nothing burger. And this is probably the most retarded argument of all of them because it's absolutely irrelevant whether the ultimate impact of suppressing the laptop decided the election, right? That's almost like
Mhm.
saying attempted murder is okay if the person doesn't die. Who cares? If you were trying to suppress information to influence an election, it matters. It does not matter if your actions ultimately influence that election.
Right, right.
What
That
what
makes
kind of
sense.
moronic argument is this? And it just gives you an idea of how desperate they are to reach for any bad argument
Mhm.
to hand wave away the Twitter files. Because if they're doing this whole, well, it didn't really have an impact anyway, that is kind of an argument. That's like a third grade level argument.
Although, yeah, I totally agree with what you just said. But when I read this first point, it did actually get me to reevaluate in my mind how important the censorship was in terms of the outcome. Like I was convinced what Twitter did basically swung the election.
Hmm.
And now, now that I think about it a little bit more carefully, I don't think I don't think it's so obvious to me anymore. Because what I'm thinking about, for example, is that, for example, would my family members have known about it? And I think the answer is no. There were enough other actors, in the mainstream media that I don't think so. Ultimately, just the Twitter's single action maybe
Another thing I want to
wasn't.
address is this assertion that has been made that the Hunter Biden files did breach Twitter terms of service because it was posting
The
somebody's
hack.
nudes without consent,
Oh,
right?
okay, okay,
That's
yeah,
what a lot of people are saying. So it just based on the fact of terms of service, they can as far as posting nudes without consent,
yeah,
they can ban it or they can ban James Woods for posting it. Not so because as far as I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe somebody working at Twitter can correct me if I'm wrong. Did Hunter Biden ever call them up and say, "Hey, these are in fact my nudes from my laptop, and I do not consent to have them on your website"? Did he do that? That would be a hell of a thing if he did that. I'm pretty darn sure he didn't, right? Because what would that entail? That would entail him admitting that all those files are his.
yeah.
It was 2 weeks away from the election. They were in full on scramble mode and deny, deny, deny. Say it's Russian hacking, Russian interference, whatever. Leave it vague so that people could even maybe say that the Russians, whatever, photoshopped it or something, right?
Yeah.
To call up
It-
Twitter and say, yes, those are definitely pictures of me, and I need you to take it off because I don't consent to have those pictures. He never did that, and we know why. Because even that admission is embarrassing.
that raises an interesting question, which is that I mean, is it presumed like if somebody is posting porn, is it presumed that they do that with the consent of whoever is in there? And
I think it is.
until
I think it is. Look at how many look at how many accounts post porn on Twitter. Does
right.
Twitter track down every single person and every single porn clip and verify that they consent to have their thing posted?
Yeah, almost certainly not.
Almost certainly not. The only way that would come into play is that if that person contacted Twitter and said, so and so posted an image of me that I don't consent to.
Right.
So if you can
But
show
what's
me
this-
where Hunter Biden contacted
Yeah.
Twitter and said James Wood posted a picture of me that is definitely me, and I want you to remove it, then I'll eat my words. But you know what? I'm guessing that didn't happen. Probably because he didn't want to. He was still in the mode where he thought he could just pretend that it wasn't him, right?
Yeah.
Or they wanted to live in that gray area, that ambiguity, so that that Biden could limp over the finish line, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't think has he ever acknowledged that those files are accurate and they're him? No, I don't think so. So how can you say it's not consensual? For all you know, it's a computer generated nothing, right? James Wood just posted a computer generated something. Nobody said it's this is me and I don't consent. Nobody said that. So Twitter knew they were real. Twitter knew they were real. Okay. If they were fake, so, or if they were some other human being that's not Hunter Biden, so you can't ban James Woods. It's not even Hunter Biden. What are you talking about? And for the government to come in and say, well, just keep an eye out. This brings us to the next point that's often raised. They will say that the government didn't violate the First Amendment because they didn't tell Twitter, you go in and delete the Hunter Biden laptop photos and ban anybody who posts it. Didn't have to.
Right.
They came to Twitter and Facebook. We know they came to Facebook too because this is on record with Mark Zuckerberg in an interview. They said, watch out for there might be some Russian misinfo regarding, this sort of stuff. So just keep an eye out for it.
Right.
Okay. And then this comes into their lap. Well, there's no evidence that this is a Russian hack. There's no evidence that this is revenge porn. There's no evidence that this is any of that stuff. And yet Twitter made the call to suppress it. Based on what evidence? Based on the government. You can say, well, they didn't explicitly tell you to. They don't need to explicitly say it. They know 97% of Twitter is run by Democrats and they know what certain words will do to them. This would be like, let's say it's the 1960s and you're driving into this like hick town in the South and you're a person of color and, the cops don't want you to stay overnight in their town because, they're racist and all that good stuff. And they go to the motel owner and they just say, hey, some strangers are coming in. I think that
Wink,
the motel owner will understand what that means. They'll understand that means that non-white people are coming in and you should put up the no vacancy sign because we don't want those people staying here. And that is a relationship, I would argue, that Twitter and the government have. There's no need for them to say, you got to delete that one. They just have to hint that there's some stuff that might be released very soon. And we think it might be Russian misinformation.
Yeah.
And here's another thing. One might say, well, you can't assume just because of the timing that was the intent of the FBI. And you can't assume that just because you're 2 weeks away from the election, that suppressing the laptop was politically motivated on the part of Twitter and the 97% Democrats that work at Twitter. You can't assume all those things. And yet these same people, where did the leak come from? And why did the leak happen when it happened? The leak happened when it happened because Republican operatives got a hold of it because Hunter Biden was a dumb fuck and brought his laptop to some repair shop and they got their hands on it. And of course, they didn't release it months before the election. What did they do? They released it 2 weeks before the election. And what will every leftist and Democrat tell you about the timing of that?
Yeah. Obviously politically motivated.
And I don't disagree. Use your common sense. I know that's why the Republicans released it 2 weeks before, for political motivations. Of course, that's why they released it 2 weeks before. Okay? And in the same vein, that's why Twitter and Democrats suppressed the same information 2 weeks before. That's why the FBI came and, gave a hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. So there's something coming. It's Russian misinfo. Come on, guys, use your brain.
Yeah.
You used your common sense in your brain when it came time to conclude that Republicans released this out of political motivation, and you were right. But I'm also right when I say that that's the same rationale and motivation that Twitter and Democrats had to suppress the same exact story 2 weeks before. That's why.
Yeah. That's the common sense interpretation, which actually I haven't seen other people try to argue that. This guy actually, when he makes this argument that no, it actually, the FBI didn't try to censor the Hunter Biden laptop, he basically tries to argue that the FBI was being very vague and non-specific, right? And then what I would say to that is, if the FBI is being so vague and non-specific, what could you even actually be saying for, whatever, an hour in a meeting for, right? If all you could say is like, look out for hacks or something like that, right? Like, why do you need a whole hour to go over or whatever? I'm assuming the meeting, these meetings were regular meetings in order to convey something that's so non-specific, right? Like, there must be some new information or some information exchange that's happening. That, to me, doesn't pass also the common sense or the smell test.
No, it doesn't. And people can rightly point out that, well, common sense and the smell test, that's not going to convict anybody. And you're right. I don't think it will convict anybody. Mm-hmm. I don't think we can send anybody to jail or fine anyone based on this information, but it's all out there now.
Well,
there's enough to litigate it, like as far as creating precedent and how these tech companies interact with Section 230 and things like that. There's enough there for that, but there's not enough to say you tried to influence elections.
Even in this Tech Dirt article, I think he underplays a huge discrepancy here, which is that there's kind of these, there's sort of multiple primary sources that we have access to, right? One of them is this disclosure from Yoel. Is it Yoel Roth? What is his last name? I forget. Anyway,
yes.
He's the Twitter, head trust and safety guy, who specifically in his disclosure to the FEC that he was told about the Hunter Biden laptop. In the deposition of this Elvis Chan guy, who's an FBI agent, in his deposition, he's claiming that he never mentioned the Hunter Biden by name. That is a huge discrepancy. And this guy tries to point it out, or tries to pass it off as he says, and Chan tells basically the same story with a few, quote, slight differences, mostly in terms of framing. But then later on, he himself actually talks about this fact that they disagreed on, the two versions of the story disagree on whether Hunter Biden was actually named. So he's saying that, no, we never talked about Hunter Biden. And Yoel Roth clearly says...
Someone's lying.
Exactly. Yeah. Someone is lying here.
I know that these days stuff moves fast, and 3 years ago feels like 1,000 years ago. But just remember when Tim Pool, Jack Dorsey, and Vijay Gadde were on Joe Rogan, and they essentially just ran around and denied any kind of bias, any kind of process that resulted in biased results. They just kept on leaning on, their terms of service and they just refused to acknowledge that there's any sort of biased result. They've been proven wrong. Don't let them gaslight you. Don't let them move the goalposts. And if they were lying about that thing, what else can they lie about?
Yeah. Okay. Again, if we kind of take a step back here, and let's just say that there were First Amendment violations. Why would you say that? Like, so what? Why does that actually matter going forward? What would you say?
Well, I would say the same thing that Elon Musk has said repeatedly. Twitter is now the public square, and people have a right to speak in it.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, First Amendment laws and principles do apply to it.
Right. But as a practical matter, though, we don't actually even care so much because Elon bought Twitter now, right? So I think we can already be somewhat, comforted by the fact that he owns Twitter, and we will not have such egregious violations kind of going forward. And also, if he kind of fulfills his promise that he's going to add, more functionality to Twitter to the point where it's competing against YouTube, then does this, in my mind, it really makes us less critical that we kind of win this argument. Just as a
no, it's not less critical, and it's not
Okay.
because
Okay.
you never know. You never know. What if he dies? What if he sells it? What if there's a whole host of things?
That's
We really
true.
need to. We need to now that we have a use case or a shining example where people are abusing their position. This is a new space still. The internet, social media, it's a new space, and the law hasn't caught up. So we really need to use these cases to push them into the courts and challenge, like, what is your relationship with Section 230, et cetera? What are the rules governing you now that you own the public square, right? You're a private
Right.
company, true, but you own the public square. So this matters. You're just like a phone company. We have to talk about, well, what are the rules governing how a phone company interacts with the First Amendment.
Right. But I guess what I'm saying though is
So it
that
needs to be challenged, all of it.
I think you're right about the Section 230 thing, but the First Amendment thing I don't think matters because of the private company defense, right? In other words,
No, it does, because if
no,
they,
hang on a sec. The government doesn't actually need to step in order for shit to be really bad, right? Because these companies are all run by, or right now YouTube and Facebook, they are run by leftists. They don't actually need the government to come and tell them, hey, there's some Russian disinformation coming along. You should, censor it. The government can totally step back and not be involved at all, and these companies would still be wreaking havoc, right?
not if
So
you
that's-
remove their 230 protections.
Right. That's why I'm saying I think the battle should be around, whether or not these are public squares, et cetera, and not so much on the First Amendment thing. Because, yeah, I just feel like the First Amendment thing, it's not as useful in terms of these companies are politically biased anyways, even without the government getting involved.
True. But we need to use this example.
Yeah, I don't know how, like, this is, so that's where, that's where the battle is going to shift to now. So they argue, we can do whatever the fuck we want, we're private companies. And now the argument's going to be, no, you can't do whatever the fuck you want because you are actually acting as a public square.
And they took 230 protections.
Yeah.
So they have obligations.
But 230
And that's
itself
not-
right now doesn't, it doesn't
I think,
talk about,
no, that's your interpretation maybe, but,
Yeah, but
these can all
it
be
doesn't-
argued in a court, and it depends on what the judge says.
right. But I'm just saying 230 doesn't necessarily say, doesn't mention, the term public square in there, I don't think.
No, but I think it will do the job for what we want, which is to rein these people in.